Welcome back, welcome back. Ridley Scott is one of Hollywood's hottest properties, and the director of films that include Gladiator and Blade Runner has just released his latest film, Body of Lies, which stars Leonardo DiCaprio and Russell Crowe. It's an action-packed movie centered on US intelligence operations in the Middle East. And I met up with Ridley during his time in the UK to promote the film. And before we see the interview, here is a clip of the movie itself.
Agent Ferris is arriving at the site now.
Thank you.
What do you want to do with this guy?
Just watch him.
Watch him and what else?
Nothing else.
I'm not sure about this GID surveillance. Can't see any of Honey's guys.
I spotted a few so far. Who's this? Who just sat down?
It's one of our guys.
One of your guys?
Yeah, a station asset.
If he makes that jihadist suspicious, they will shut down that safe house and leave.
He's gonna get that guy killed.
He's gonna blow this whole operation.
Continue tracking. Very expanded.
Tracking.
Ridley, it's great to see you again. We worked together many years ago.
We did indeed, yeah. You got a great memory for names, and I always asked you, what's your trick? Because I think I worked with you in Lime Grove, and then I didn't see you for like 15 years. I think you were coming down the road in traffic, and I was coming down the road, and we happened to stop, and you looked at me and said, Ridley! So, and you always said to me, my trick is when I meet the person, they say, this is Fred Smith, I have to say, so, Fred, so, Mr. Smith, so, Fred Smith. I do that in the first 3 or 4 minutes, and it goes in there.
Yeah, I think that's right, because the people who have memory tricks, real tricks, I mean, they're so complicated to remember the tricks that you never get to remember the name.
I've tried that trick, and it doesn't work.
Body of Lies, you remember that film?
Yes,
certainly. Right. But what attracted you to it?
Always the material. It's always the underlying material in everything. And just when you think you're on the road to doing this, I read this material by David Ignatius, who's a foreign correspondent at Washington Post. Passion has been in the Middle East for the last 30 years. So when you read the book, it's so inside and insider information that clearly he changes names, but when you meet with him, he's obviously interviewed, I would think, every president and every head of the CIA in the last 30 years. So you know you're circling the truth in all this stuff. So one's always looking for a different slant on who doesn't want to be a spy. So if I got a spy film, I'm going to pay attention to if it's really well written.
Right, and this one was very well written, and was a hit as a book too, wasn't it?
Yeah, quite a big hit. Yeah.
One of the things about the film is that it's very violent. Of course, the film at times. Is it too violent?
It's truthful. I think it's truthful. You begin the film with the idea of a guy who's already thinking about, what am I doing? At what moment can I sit in a room and let a person be interviewed violently? That's a question with all these guys, these operatives have to deal with. And it really depends on the circles of despair that you have to deal with doing your job. So if you're dealing with a guy that actually has done something dreadful in the last year or 2 months and you've captured him and you need to interview him, what are you going to do? Are you going to be nice about it? That's always the question.
Present company, i.e. this film, accepted. If you were putting 3 of your films so far, because you've got many, many, many years to come, of course, but three of your films in the time capsule, which would they be?
It would have to be Duelist because #1, Blade Runner because it survives 25 years and still keeps flying, and Gladiator was a kind of interesting. We cracked the idea of saying you're going to do a Roman Empire movie and everyone sniggers and say that's ridiculous. I think Gladiator, because it is a form of it's just pure entertainment, but we kind of got inside the Roman Empire. And so whilst there are many inaccuracies in it, there's enough accuracies for scholars. I've had letters from scholars saying, thank God you reawoken the interest in Roman culture.
And in terms of the future, in fact, leading into that with a bit of the past, which is, I was talking to Ron Howard the other day about whether movies have changed in the last 25 years or the 30 years or the 35 years you've been in them and so on. And he said, well, the technical means of delivery may have changed, but it's still pointing a camera and telling a story.
Absolutely.
Do you think moviedom has changed?
No, I think he's right. It's always to do with the script. It's always the underlying material. Like who said? I think it's Kitchcock said it's all about the script. And that's what I find is the hardest single thing to do. Making the movies, for me, is pretty straightforward. And if you got it on paper, it's fun. If you haven't got it on paper, it's hell. So I spend a lot of my time with reading and writers now. And I can write a little bit. I can spend my time during a movie with constantly adjusting process at night, adjusting screen words and things like that. But I can't write like the guys I can now hire. I wouldn't even attempt to. So there's 4 or 5 writers I like to work with, and writing is a very, very great art.
You've worked with Russell Crowe for 4 films and so on and so forth. Are there, as you go forward at the moment, are there people that you've never worked with that you still yearn to work with? Actors, actresses?
Yeah, of course they don't leap to mind, but yeah, of course there are.
He said plain safe.
Yes, exactly. But I worked with one. I had great fun with Hopkins. He was great. I'd like to work with him again. That was painless. I was kind of a bit intimidated working with Anthony until I really, walked on set and he'd say, "Well, what do you want to do, boy?"
That's right. That's right. At least if every lunchtime you get him to do his Richard Burton impression for a couple of minutes,
great.
Which is fantastic.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Very easy.
What do you plan for the future? 1 film a year?
Yeah. Well, I run a development company in Hollywood, and I've been partners with my brother for 40 years. Tony just brought out Pelham. His is coming out this year with Travolta, and 5th time with Denzel Washington. Very good film. We do a lot of television, because I think television, believe it or not, is the future.
Glad to hear.
Well, films are getting smaller, and television's getting even more ambitious. And I'll do probably Robin Hood by February, probably Child 44, start prepping by October next year. I have to hit Monopoly the following year, and I've got a science fiction which I've finally identified and is being written right now. So at any one time in the evolution of the company, there's about 40 things in development, and there's 12 on the fast burner. Yeah. So that's how it functions.
Yeah. And which is the film that made by somebody else that you would most like to have made?
I think it would have to be one of Kubrick's. I think it would probably be 2001, because what he would do, he had this knack, certainly for Lyndon, 2001, Strangelove. He would distill a single idea down to a 2-hour or 2.5-hour narrative, and somehow it was the final word. It was the last word in that subject, and that's why Strangelove was so brilliant. He made it's a comedy, and yet the logic was terrifying.
Yeah, and that's remained so modern to this day.
Yeah, well, the CIA got really anxious about him, saying, "How do you know that that's what we do?" He says, "Well, I didn't. I just sat down and thought about it a bit and thought, if I'm a pilot on interlock, I can't unlock, and I'm carrying a hydrogen bomb. Isn't that logical?" And he said, "Oh, duh, yeah."
Ridley, bless you. It's a joy to see you again.
Yeah, it's great to see you.
Great fun.
Fantastic.
Great fun.
Yeah.
Ridley Scott there, talking to me earlier. In a moment, we hear from Ramallah on the tensions between Hamas and Fatah. That's after this break.